Previously,
Why isn't it possible?
It's just not.
Why not, you stupid
which averages out, but with the Provence model, move it to its own project. So our first step was to just set up a blank project and then move all the stuff over from our PR into it. This required a little finagling, so to speak. So we've got our library. I had to shim out some of the stuff that was private in Candle. So in the transformers, Candle transformers, in the Roberta model implementation, this ID2 label is private. And because I didn't want to re-implement it, what I did is a shim, and the hope is that down the road PR it so that it can be used, publicly. So just provide some shims for things that we need that would be public and maybe down the road could be public, and also get device. But beyond that, it's basically just taking the code as it was in the PR, moving it over, splitting it out into modules instead of just one single file, and then doing some Clippy cleanup and stuff like that. So before we just had a single file, now we've got a module for our process pipeline, and then for our sentence rounding. And then the library is what has our forward pass and stuff like that. Now, one thing that also pushed me to moving this into a separate project was the sentence identification. So in the first example in the PR, we had a very simplistic sentence identification, basically looking for punctuation and white space. But that's pretty brittle. The Python implementation has something a little more sophisticated. Yeah, so it's using natural language toolkit in Python. So now that we have a separate library, we can add more dependencies and not worry about bloating Candle. In order to do the sentence splitting a little bit more reliably, can add the Punkt Crate, and it seems like it's not as up to date. So I was able to find a fork. So use the Punkt Crate, but because that Punkt Crate is kind of seems like it's minimally supported, add that as a feature flag as well. A default feature flag, but a feature flag. So in sentence rounding with Punkt, sentence splitting, we'll just use the Punkt Crate to split the sentences. And then if we're not using Punkt, then we'll just go back to our kind of simplistic punctuation and white space based sentence detection and splitting. So we have a library, we can add our own dependencies. One other thing we needed to work on was better aligning with the Python implementation. In the first draft, it was just finding the average of the key probabilities for a sentence and then determining if that average was above the threshold. But as I mentioned, the original Python implementation does, I guess, what I would call a decision average. So for each token in the sentence, if it's above the threshold, set it to true. If it's below, set it to false. And then what you're doing is, of those, average that out and determine if it's above the threshold. So that was something I needed to work on in the sentence rounding. I decided to make it configurable just for fun and for testing purposes. So using the probability average is what we had before. Decision average, this is where we're going. If it's above, set it to 1, otherwise set it to 0. And then from there, the logic is largely the same. Now, the Provence model, though, it supports more than just single question, single passage. It has multiple questions, multiple passages. It has reranking as well. So right now with our process single function, we're not doing any of that. So that was next up. was adding in most of what the Python implementation had. And the Rust type system is pretty fun. So if we take a look at some of the Python type signatures, you can see question, context, titles. So lots of union types, optional types, and specifically this title one, optional union of either a list string or it's a string. So some pretty hairy types to work through. So getting this to work in Rust was a little bit challenging, but I used the either crate to do that. So for process, we're going to set some type aliases, again, just to reason about it a little better. And then if we take a look, now we have our process pipeline, and you can see we're going to have our either and our option. So let's actually pop over to the source file. So to get around the default values, we're just going to use unwrap or. So if it's not provided, if it's a none, set a default value. Beyond that, dealing with the multiple values isn't anything particularly fancy. We're just going to enumerate it. We're going to set up some vecs to be able to handle all of this. And to match the Python implementation, before we were returning a single value, the Python implementation's process function, if we go down here, it returns some lists. So like a list of the pruned contexts, the re-ranking scores, and the compression rate. So we're going to do that similarly. If we take a look at the processed result, to be able to handle the multiple is do some normalization. So we're going to have to figure out whether we're provided a single value, multiple values, and then basically just normalize it into the same shape regardless of what was passed in. So we're always going to want to have multiple question, multiple contexts. And in the case of a single, we're just going to have a vec of one value. And then that way, once it's the same shape, we can just run it through the same code. Now we have our similar, get the encodings, split the sentences, map between the sentence boundaries and the token, and then use that to figure out whether we keep drop. And then we're also surfacing the re-ranking value. We have a reorder. This is for the re-ranking. So we're going to reorder it based on the re-ranking values and then just return it. There's some helper functions in here, but conceptually, it's pretty much the same as before. So if we do this example now, which is just going to have the one. Yeah, so now we are much more closely matching the Python implementation. Given the question, given the context and the threshold, we're getting back out the pruned context and the re-ranking score and the compression rate. So in this case, re-ranking, there's only one context, but we're much more closely aligning with that Python implementation. But there's a kicker here in the implementation. When we're iterating and enumerating, I should say, we're actually just kind of doing it one-off. You can see here, we're going through and then we're calling question context, so we're doing it as a pair. Now, typically though, for performance reasons, we should be batching these so that we're able to do as much work as possible in a single pass. So that was the next logical step, right? You'd think. So this is where we start getting into some of the pain. So if we were to try batching this, and if we take a look at some of our changes, so we've added a process batch. What this is just going to do is basically group multiple inputs together in a batch and send it off to the model. So in theory, it should be doing the work more efficiently. And from here, then if we go back and if we take a look at our example, so if we don't provide any values, there will be a default question and some default contexts. So let's try doing that. Seems to work, but something's not quite right. As a quick test, we're going to add some simple print debugging. More on that later, but when you're dealing with tensors, or at least me, I had some trouble with LLDB. Simple print debugging. Let's try running this again. We've also added more contexts to be able to really test out the efficiency of the batching. So this took nearly 4 seconds, and all we're doing is just one question and then a handful of contexts. It was at this point I figured out that something was not quite right. What I wanted to do was quickly benchmark it and get a baseline. I have Jupyterlab running, and I have a notebook that has the original Provence Python implementation running. So let's try that and see what our baseline is. So we've got our dependencies. We're just doing some setup. We've got Torch running. We're using MPS. We're going to get our transformers pipeline. We're going to importantly convert it to MPS. And then similar to our Rust example, let's take a look here. So let's try running it. Okay, in this case, it took 2 seconds. And let's try that again. All right, so now that it's maybe a little warmer, about 649 milliseconds. So a little over half a second. A lot faster than nearly 4 seconds. So what's going on? We're trying to do batching, and it's very slow. Python implementation, much faster. What I wanted to figure out was where it was being slow. To do that, we're going to use a tool called a Flamegraph, and that measures as a percentage of the execution time what parts of the code is taking what percentage of that. Actually, we're going to use a Flamechart. So again, nearly 4 seconds. We'll save that. Now we're taking a look here at the Flamechart, and it's a little hard to decipher, but we can see here this loading, oddly enough, is seeming to take a little bit. So loading, we're doing some movements. Metal seems to be taking up a decent amount of time. Yeah, so you can see here the move from metal honestly seems to be where most of it is getting eaten up. Decent amount of time, seemingly, with the metal conversion. Well, after some noodling around and figuratively banging on it with a hammer, what I ended up doing is, yes, a little bit of cleanup, but also removing the batching code. And for whatever reason, that actually seemed to help. So now, code's cleaned up and the batching's been removed. I should note that the code cleanup did not fundamentally change the performance characteristics. It was just refactoring. So if we do this, so non-batched, we're at a second, so still slower, but quicker than the batch version. And if we produce a new Flamechart, and let's just compare. So if we take a look, this is as a percentage of the execution time. So is there anything interesting that stands out? Our load process took 20%, load took 36%. With non-batch, with batched, process took 13%, so 20%. And then load took 45%, and non-batched, it was 36%. So without batching, again, it's a much more, the loading takes up much less time relative. And then if we dig into the loading itself, we can see here, memory move, memory move, memory move. Memory move is still taking it up a decent amount, actually. Let's see if we can take a look here. Load, load, load. Allocations, loading, embedding, metal. Yeah, interestingly, it looks fairly similar. It's just a smaller percentage. So I'm not a metal or GPU developer whatsoever. But again, what was interesting is with batching, seemingly there seemed to be some sort of a bottleneck when apparently going to and from metal. It seemed to be something to do with the batch size or command buffers, I think, is what I had seen kind of referenced somewhere. So very interesting. Yeah, go figure, the Python version, PyTorch, was optimized to heck. So at this point, being that I was out of my element, I figured, well, I'll kind of clean up the non-batched implementation, kind of put a pin in it, understanding that there's something going on seemingly with the lower level metal kernels, and just kind of do a little bit of cleanup and see what we end up with. So our final implementation, where it's at right now, just a little bit cleaned up. And then what I also wanted to do is, in the example, add some syntax highlighting to kind of visualize what it was actually doing. And actually, seemingly with that a little bit of code cleanup between these diffs, we got it down to about 750, 760 milliseconds. So Python 650 milliseconds, Rust version 750 milliseconds, non-batched for whatever reason. Close, not quite there, but pretty darn close. And you can see we added some syntax highlighting, which I think was really useful. The syntax highlighting in this case was nothing particularly fancy. It's just using a diff crate to be able to do the diff on the actual output. So that was my little tale of porting a machine learning model from Python to Rust. And what did we learn? Well, I guess when you have brilliant people working on PyTorch for many, many years, they're going to figure out how to optimize it and just make it really easy and nice to work with. And if you're going to be working on Rust implementations, it's interesting, but it's challenging. So I'm still pretty happy with how it turned out. Again, at the end, 750 milliseconds and a handful of benchmarks versus 650 milliseconds. So pretty darn close. And given that it's not batching, again, maybe there's something in the PyTorch metal performance shaders that's optimized to kind of handle this stuff for you. That's got like a bunch of optimizations. Given that, still pretty darn fun. I'm pretty happy with where it's at right now. Work still to be done, but it's been interesting diving into the weeds, so to speak, and moving beyond just using the pre-baked implementations. But for now, I think that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.